This episode is brought to you by Netflix. This Monday night, witness the end of an era. John Cena takes center stage for his final appearance ever on Monday Night Raw. One last match, one unforgettable farewell. Come celebrate the legacy of a true WWE legend. Monday Night Raw, November 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, only on Netflix. Be there for the moment everyone will be talking about.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Horror Bytes, Safe Room's weekly indie horror game showcase. I'm your host, Jay Krieger.
And I'm the other one, Neil Bolt.
And this week we're fortunate enough to be joined by developer Nathan Buckley. Nathan is the madman behind Bad Tasty Studio, currently developing the Bagman, a Genesis Mega Drive era-inspired point-and-click horror game pitting babysitter Eloise and her friends against unimaginable terror in gorgeously grotesque 16-bit fashion. So without further ado, Nathan, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me. And that's a great intro to the game there.
Got a little bit of practice introducing games, but...
It's better than mine. I'll need you to take you with me to do the elevator pitch or something.
You know, it's funny you say that because that seems to be like a common thing that indie developers have said to us, you know, and clearly their work is like very creative and original and quite literally jumps off the Steam page at us. But they say like when it comes to selling themselves or the game, sometimes that can be difficult.
Yes, very.
But we are so thrilled to have you, especially for a game such as the Bagman to chat about today, considering Neil and I, as you know, you told us before we were recording, you listened to the show, you know that we've been on quite a point-and-click horror kick this year. So we're very excited to dig into the Bagman. But we figured we would kick things off in getting to know you with your relationship with horror, the genre itself. What first drew you to the genre? And how has that relationship evolved over the years?
Yeah, so I was very young. I think I was about 6 or 7 when I first watched Nightmare on Elm Street. My some of my family owned a video shop, and my grandma ended up getting lots of videos in like you know the ones they used to give them. They went VHS for your eyes only sort of thing, like to preview before you actually bought the stock into your rental shop. So she had loads of those, and one of them was Nightmare on Elm Street, and I ended up just watching that and sort of like, even though I was very, very scared, I got such a thrill of both being scared and then also scaring other people. So me and my sister were massively into horror, and we watched the Pet Sematary, and there's a character in that, I can't remember all the names, but she's bedbound, and she has this kind of like there's a scene in the film where it's like a dream scene where she's remembering her sister and her kind of ailments, and she does this Rachel, never go to sleep again type thing. And one of me and my sister used to do, because that was one of the things that used to really scare my mum. So we used to wait till she was asleep and then sort of like contort our bodies and like shuffle into the room saying that line, and it just freak her out. And we used to always do stuff like that just to kind of like spook each other and things like that, and yeah, so that was kind of like when I first got into horror. And then it was like watching lots of films. Really, it was very much more films than video games at that point. And then video games wise, I sort of just started. Unfortunately, I never had a PlayStation 2. I kind of was like a PC gamer, and so a lot of my experience of horror games was very much more of the point and click adventure type game stuff that eventually came out. Yeah.
What about the point and click horror sort of, or even just generally speaking, point and click games kind of like appealed to you the most about, you know, their design? Was it their art style or such?
Yeah, so I think for me, one of the first, I was giving this some good thought, and one of the first horror games I can remember playing was either Maniac Mansion on my friend's Nintendo, or Alone in the Dark, because another friend had I think this was a PC. So he used to always go around his house and play on games there. And it was Alone in the Dark, and he had that on one of his computers. And so from there, I was obsessed with Alone in the Dark. I basically used to go around his house just to play Alone in the Dark rather than hang around with him. But he was all right. And yeah, and so I've like from then on, kind of like that adventure horror was very much explored. Like I really enjoyed it. And then I remember when I got my own PC eventually, I got I think it was. I remember Sanitarium. I don't point and click. That was a very kind of a big one for me because that was kind of like just an opening to like, wow, these games exist on PC in much detail. Because I think the other horror games that I played before that were on the Mega Drive and they were very much more edgy, kind of like Splatterhouse 2 and games like that. You know, that was when I was little, I was like, I want to make Splatterhouse 2 or a variant of it when I'm older, type thing. But yeah, so I kind of started there. And also I got into, because I was PC, I was like Doom, obviously, and Blood was another one that I was like, yeah, this is cool. Blood, guts and gore. But Night Trap, I remember being quite an important one as well. The VMV, or however you say it, game for the Mega Drive CD. I got that, and I spent hours on that. That was great because it was the first time I've seen kind of like my love of horror films coming into something that you can play and kind of like it's not just linear. You can kind of make choices, and you can also make the wrong choices as well. I always remember the end of that game. She kind of, so the main lady character, kind of congratulating you for doing a really good job, but she's standing on a trap for a very long time that you can set off. And even though you're so close to the game, I don't think there was a save and load. It was so tempting just to push the button and just like completely like ruin the game. And that was so much like I had to laugh about that because it was kind of set up in this like kind of way. It was just a bit over the top horror and stuff. But yeah, point and clicks. I think Harvester was another one that I remember playing when I was younger. That was a big one. And Dark Seed. I never completed Dark Seed because I think the version that I had used to always crash at a certain point. And of course, Seventh Guest was a big one when CD drives started coming out. Yeah, so that was just lots of like games like that. I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream was another big one that me and my friends used to just basically play over and over again. That was really well written. Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned Sanitarium because that was a game that Neil and I covered this year as part of our kind of just like journey back into point and click horror games and whatnot. And that was a game that I had briefly played as a kid, and then this, that, or the other got in the way of it, and then getting to revisit it this year was really one of those examples, I think, of just like the timelessness aspect of point and click in a way that I don't necessarily think can always be the case with like games from that era. It's one of those things where it's like the thing that stands the test of time for me about one of the biggest strengths of the genre is, the attention to writing and world building. The fact that, the gameplay framework is more or less the same of, any other point and click game. I find that like that allows the developers, to really hone in and focus on the type of story that they want to tell, especially for that game, like it being so psychologically horror focused. Was just one of those aspects again that like when I go back and I am looking at older point and click games that are available on Steam or GOG or what have you, it's not always with the same hesitation that maybe it is with some other games from my childhood where I'm like, well, am I thinking about this or looking at this through like rose tinted glasses? But more often than not, revisiting these point and click adventures has been probably the highlight of this year for me, I think. I'm sure Neil kind of feels the same way to a degree.
Yeah, absolutely do. I think when you were talking before about like the sort of games you played at the time, especially in the Mega Drive ones, like Splatterhouse but in the point and click stuff like Night Trap, it's even though it's a very different game that you've got, I can see those sort of games bleeding through into what you're doing. So, I mean, was that like the main reason you went with like this Mega Drive Genesis project? Was, as you said, Splatterhouse was like the dream that you wanted to go and make when you were a child, but like just that sort of aesthetic maybe?
Yeah, so I wanted to make so I was working. I'm a contract games programmer, and I wanted a side project that's just to play around with and things like that. There's two things I wanted to do: make a horror game, because that's ultimately the space that I want to move into and be in, and also I wanted to make make a Mega Drive game because I've just always wanted to make a a retro game that I was brought up with as a kind of like a bucket list type of dealio.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things I wanted to do was I was looking at like what games are currently around in horror, and there's a big thing for PlayStation-esque aesthetic
Yes.
with that. So I thought there is a popularity about retro games. Why not go full retro and just do it in a way where I kind of get to tick off that bucket list checkbox for making a game for the console that I kind of loved growing up with. Because there's the other element as well is when I was little, I saw Clock Tower for the SNES.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if I played it at that point or if I just saw it in a magazine or saw some kind of video. Because I think it only came out on the SNES in Japanese. I could be wrong there. But either way, I think there's a part of me that's going, I want that on the Mega Drive. Why doesn't the Mega Drive have more games like that? Especially at that point as well. I was going around my friends a lot to play point and clicks on his parents' computer. So I wanted that kind of game on the Mega Drive. So I thought, one day I'll do that. So I thought I'll do that tick box as well. I'll kind of like make little me in my head happy, because that's kind of the whole point of doing fun stuff, I think.
That's it. And like, obviously with that, obviously that comes with limitations, which I assume is quite a fun challenge, because we've seen that in a few games in the recent years where people have gone back to like old hardware and tried to sort of retrofit that with modern sensibilities. So yeah, what was the challenge of that like for you? Like,
So
making
the
things?
challenges actually helps define the art style, and kind of gives it a very authentic retro feel, because it's literally the artwork that I'm creating, even though it's very hard to describe sometimes the limitations of the art to the artists that I've worked with.
Yeah.
It's created a very nice. It has to run the hardware, so there's limited colors, there's limited amount of colors you can have loaded at the right time, and all that kind of stuff, and memory constraints. But through that, we've ended up making a very nice kind of, what I feel is nice anyway, retro kind of style and unique feel, somewhat. Because it all started with like a mood board. I just take a load of like images and inspiration from different games, different films. There's a lot of people have done lots of like pixel art for films or mock-ups of game films, which is very handy when you kind of build an inspiration, especially for a retro style. So I threw all these into a mood board. Then I had a conversation with kind of like my main artist, Milos Kostek, and we worked together. We brainstormed and we got this kind of nice style. We then refined it a little bit to kind of get it running on the hardware, and then from there that kind of like led the way. So it leads with certain limitations about lighting. I can sort of like mock out fake lighting.
Yeah.
But again, that gives it a very nice feel as well. It just seems that like everything just seems to work. And again, it's because I enjoy the technical challenges anyway, and it brings a lot of joy. It's very easy to work on, even though certain things, like I wish there's certain parts of me at this present moment in time I'm dealing with where I wish I was making just this game just in Unity, because I've used that professional. I use that professionally along with Unreal, and I know half the stuff that I'm knocking up I can knock up a lot quicker, either because there's things that already exist for it that I could just bring in as assets, or plugins and things like that. But so there's that give and take a little bit. But on the flip side, I'm really enjoy building up this like little engine. And that the code, I hit compile, it spits out a DLL for PC and or DLL equivalent for other platforms, and it already spits out a ROM for the Mega Drive. And on the PC side, I have to then hook it up. I do use Unity for like the render and the input, and what happens is basically the DLL is the game, and that sends up, hey, draw this, hey, draw that, and the Unity basically goes, okay, I've got your message to draw this, that, and whatever. Oh, here's some input as well. The players push this button, and it processes it. So it's been nice to kind of keep that little engine thing that I've written evolving as well, and just kind of technical challenges, which I'm very much a programmer on that side with design leanings. So I do get a lot of enjoyment from just like building out systems and playing around with code and doing all that kind of stuff.
That's interesting as well, because in trying to capture like nostalgia, as you say, many games do, it's like there's an idea of what that is, but then sort of defining yourself by the limitations of the hardware kind of makes it, I suppose, more true to what you want from your personal nostalgia for that sort of period.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And so some of the things, like, so I can get away with. I've allowed myself a little bit of flexibility for creative reasons. So for the PC and modern consoles, I'd love VO, or at least a little bit of VO.
Yeah.
Because I'm finding myself, I really enjoy working with voice actors. I've only done it a little bit, but for the trailer, I got I worked with a guy called Thomas Barker, and he was fantastic, and I really enjoyed that process. So I'd love that, and also there's a little the lighting on the PC version is a little bit smoother because at the moment I'm trying to figure out ways to get that more on on the Mega Drive version. It's a bit blocky at the moment, so I'm playing around with that. So there might be a little bit of flexibilities where I've got an slightly improved aspects for the PC version, but there'll be few and far between, and yeah, because I suppose one of the issues as well is the aim of the game is to hopefully make money, sell a game, so I can keep doing this, and feed my face and feed my daughter and my wife, put a house over our heads. So unfortunately, realities of life is I do need to make money.
Yeah.
But once so with that in mind, I do kind of keep an kind of like one foot on the ground with what little bits can I do here, which a more PC audience might appreciate a little bit more, rather than just give them the flat like just the Mega Drive version, if that makes sense. I think of VO in horror games and sound as well is such important aspects that maybe making the sound specifically a little bit higher quality for the PC will go a long way there. I might be wrong, but
I mean, ultimately, that's where the biggest part of an audience is going to be.
Yes,
because the Mega Drive side is going to be a bit more niche. So yeah.
Oh yes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame how money tends to get in the way of lots of things in life, but
it does, yes. Yeah, unfortunately so, yeah.
But no, one thing that I really love about the look of the Bagman, and sort of you spoke on it a little bit in terms of just like how we see a lot of PSX and PS2 style games being released that really, are capitalizing on the nostalgia for the genre. Before we were recording with you, we literally just recorded on another PSX style experience that came out this year. But to the point that we've been talking about, like you latching on to the Mega Drive and Sega Genesis kind of like constraints and whatnot. That's one of those aspects of design that is so fascinating, because how many, it might look the part, but how many games from that era have you encountering some of the horrors that are clearly evident from the Steam page, like seeing some of the extreme content that's going to be in your game, and the contrast between the era with which you're evoking and the way it looks. Like you would never see a body curled around a door and you have to like use a scalpel to cut open their mouth. Like that's, to me, like one of the coolest contrasts, and really getting to like see creatives like yourself kind of like explore their love of horror in this, might be looking in a classical way, but having the means to kind of like do that in the modern times when you don't have the same maybe, I suppose, content constraints that people from the earlier days in game development for those platforms did. But I suppose we should back up slightly for people that are not as familiar with the Bagman. You've described the game as an amalgamation of Day of the Tentacle, Alien Isolation, and Friday the 13th. So could you just give your sort of like quick elevator pitch for those that are unfamiliar with the Bagman?
I mean, you could do it if you want. You did such a bad. I just where is that funny thing? So I wrote it down because I didn't want to fumble my elevator pitch. You know what? It's one of the things that I practice so often, and then when it comes to actually saying it, I'm like, my name's Nathan, and I'm making the Bagman. I got very nervous. But how I describe it is, it's sort of like Day of the Tentacle meets Alien Isolation, and it's a authentic retro 16-bit pixel stealth and point-and-click game. It's horror with a narrative right out of an 80s slasher film. And like you said earlier, it's like you and your two friends, you're hunted from room to room by things that don't just stand around and wait for you to bypass them. They hunt you. There's a behavior system there which they apply pressure to keep you kind of guessing, and that's the Alien Isolation part. and you control Eloise. But I loved the Maniac Mansion / Day of the Tentacle thing where you could switch between characters. But my take on that is, rather than switching between characters and controlling them directly, you issue them commands, almost like a Goonies kind of like, help you out type thing. So you have these walkie-talkies. You can say you're hiding in a toilet and there's something approaching. You can whisper command to your mate who might be, not far away, to distract and then hide. And he'll say something like to distract the enemy, hopefully pull the enemy away, and then he'll go hide. And you can watch these play out and all that kind of stuff. Because what I wanted to do was, I wanted to approach the game with your kind of core classics. So everyone knows what point and click is. Everyone knows kind of like the stealth-based hiding. But I wanted to add this little bit of replayability, sandboxy approach as well on top. And that's kind of like the idea behind it all. I don't know if you played Lure of the Temptress or games like that. They were a Revolution Software made them. They made like Beyond the Steel Sky, Beneath the Steel Sky, and games like that. But Lure of the Temptress had this kind of like AI commandy system in it as well, which I loved as well. So it's kind of inspired by that a little bit.
Yeah, that aspect of, Eloise doesn't have to be the final girl, right? The fact that you have these compatriots and survivors or fellow friend and survivors, like that was one of those aspects of game design for the Bagman that really stood out. And it was like what I was talking about a little bit previously in terms of it being something that looks very classical or traditional to an older era, but at the same time, it has these more modern components to game design in it that, would not be super commonplace. Because as we've said, point and click adventures are typically a solo affair. So to be able to have certain elements such as, friends that you can command and the notion that time is always moving forwards is one of those unique aspects. So I guess for you, like, what was the initial genesis for the idea behind the Bagman? Like, did that originate with a specific, type of story, the atmosphere, a core mechanic? Like, what was the sort of starting point?
Yeah, so I was trying to find the notepad, but I couldn't find it, unfortunately. I think it must have been, let me just check the years. It must have been 2025, maybe 2010 or something, around maybe 2029. I had this idea it was a text adventure then. I had a phase of just writing lots of text adventures. And it was basically a game where you played as a young boy, you were in a house with your family, and everything will play out, in a timed manner. You had no control over that, but you could like tell people not to do things, and then you'd have this kind of linear path. But the whole point would be, you're in a small house, someone comes to the door, they basically will try and break in if you don't like lock the door and stuff. And every time you die, you come back alive. Obviously, you know what will happen, and you keep basically trying to re-loop this survival to try and convince your family to go X, Y, and Z directions and stuff. But that was kind of like, it was very much there's the horror genre where it's people trying to break in your house. I've forgotten it now.
Home invasion.
Yes, home invasion. Yeah, very, very much that kind of aspect from those types of films. But you've got this power basically where every time you die, you come back and you can kind of try and change it and escape basically with your family in tow. That was kind of like the core idea in my head. And it kind of just stayed on a notepad for a very long time. And then somewhere along there, I wrote the Bagman because I had. I don't want to give too much away the spoils where the story kind of comes from, but there's there's a demon. I think that's what they call him in Japan, or it might be Taiwanese. I can't remember now. Called the Rain Woman, and it's kind of pulled from that a little bit of that kind of like Japanese yokai, I think they're called, demon. Yeah. That kind of like I found quite exciting. How all these different places have their own different types of demons, and it'd be nice to kind of bring some of that and bring it into, I guess, a Western viewpoint. Yeah, so that was kind of where the idea started. It was basically a home invasion survival type game that was a text adventure that I started playing with, and then gave up on because I was like, it needs images and I can't draw. Yeah.
And then you decided to take it one more complicated step further and have these classical constraints.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just thankful that obviously I can develop for the Mega Drive, but there's very, very smart people, much smarter than me, that have made like frameworks like SGDK and things like that. So they allow, the development to be much more approachable than having to basically write on bare metal. So it makes it a bit more approachable, possible for my time and my skills anyway.
So with that sort of thing with the events like playing out in the background, regardless of what you're doing,
Yeah.
I suppose from what you said of your influence points, that sounds very night trappy in terms
Yes.
of like
Yeah.
stuff just going on. So yeah, I mean, being the point and click genre, and we've had some good examples like this here, like the Drifter, of like adding a sense of urgency to what is normally quite a sedate sort of genre. So
Yeah,
was
take your
this
time.
sort of one of the I mean that's it. So was this one of the things you wanted to do, sort of add a sense of urgency and kind of be more in keeping with that sort of Mega Drive sort of almost
Yes.
more arcade kiddie feel,
Yeah, definitely. I think so. One of the issues with point and clicks and maybe 2D horror in general, at least I find this, I could be completely wrong with this opinion, is it's very hard to kind of convey that urgency and agency. Whereas 3D kind of has a bit of a nice way of dealing with that.
Yeah.
So one of the things, having kind of time constraints on some things and things play out in a certain way, you've got something constantly kind of finding you and hunting you. All these kind of elements make up for you can't just stand there and wait. Well, you can stand there and maybe hide in a cupboard, but then things might direct to find you, or other people might unfortunately demise. And also parts of the story and parts of the lore you'll miss. I want the game to be, if you take certain routes at certain times, you'll get little tidbits of information that's going on. You might not find out all the information in one play, but this all adds to kind of this interesting way to approach the game, and this sandboxy element of, if you miss one thing, what have you missed there? And I hope that it'll kind of bring people back to kind of re-explore different elements, different moments, and stuff like that. But yeah, so it's all been a play of trying to create agency in kind of a genre which often doesn't have a lot of agency going on, or at least I find it, without doing quick time events and things like that.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, because I don't mind, I don't mind quick time events, but if that's I didn't want to fill the game with Dead by Daylight, click the button at the right point. Oh god, the meter's going down type thing. There is a bit of button bashing. So when so if you get caught by one of the enemies or one of the evil things, there's kind of like a stamina panic meter, which isn't like in your face. It's just kind of the background of very much like how Clock Tower did it, to be fair. You've got that changing background color. So if you've got enough stamina, you can button bash and that gets lower, and you can sometimes escape and things like that. But then that management of stamina and how you've got to rest up, and when you stop moving for a little while, if you need to recharge your stamina, you'll go into a breathing animation of catching your breath basically. Or if you run out of stamina, you can fall over, and then I wanted some of it is very 80. I wanted like a slasher feel to it. So if you're running, the character's going to fall over, like, and then it's going to take a moment to get off. And that's what you said earlier about the kind of the gore and stuff. I wanted it to be a bit over the top, like the 80s, like early 90s slasher films and stuff.
Love the approach to that, right? And the fact that from our first looks at the game, like we've got an inkling of what the horrors and the gore will look like, but at the same time, like I still don't feel like I have a real solid understanding of like what the actual threat is, or have an idea of like what it fully looks like. And so there's no question there. I guess that's just a compliment to not tipping your hand too early with the Bagman, because it's the thing where it's like a lot of evocative imagery, but at the same time, it's like just aloof enough that I don't feel like I already know the big reveal right before it comes out, which can sometimes be an issue.
Yeah, hopefully I can kind of keep it that way as well. We'll see.
I mean, yeah, and with this sort of 80s sort of slasher thing, I mean, one of the selling points of that film genre is like the gore and the kills, and obviously one of the features you have listed quite prominently is the abundance of death animations. So, I mean, are there any favorites so far that you've created?
So I've got one which I think I might have shown, which is where one of the characters kind of gets his eyes gouged out. But there's a kind of character called Greg, the security guard, who's more in. He's very prominent in this build that I'm doing at the moment for pitching, but it'll be in like the demo and stuff. But I've got a few of him, and one of them is, what's the film called? It's a werewolf film, and it's British. I've forgotten the name of it now. But he gets a bit where there's a bit, one of the werewolves swipes his stomach and his intestines fall out and he got sausages. I wanted to,
Dog Soldiers, yeah.
Dog Soldiers,
Yeah,
that's the one.
Dog
Yeah, that's the
Soldiers.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm awful. Well, I always forget names of things. But yeah, sausages. So there's one of his death animations where he gets swiped and his innards spill out, but he kind of holds them for a moment. That made me laugh. I'd love to kind of. I've not got one in for this yet, but I'd love to get one which is some kind of like nod to Jason Voorhees doing the sleeping bag against the tree. But I don't know how I'd fit that in, but like stuff like that, yeah. But it turns out that animations are quite expensive, so I'm just so I've got enough for my my current build, but hopefully if I can get funding, then I can really ramp them up.
I think you've even got one in the trailer that shows one of your friends like falling to their death, and so
Oh yeah,
yes. Naturally that's going to have an impact on how the player runs through the rest of that current run, right? The fact that once somebody's dead, they're dead, and so I guess it's interesting how you like. Are you finding a difficulty with balancing difficulty spikes maybe in that regard? In terms of just like. If I lose both of my friends early on because I'm careless, all of a sudden I've run out of options.
Yeah, it's almost like So one of the this is maybe why lots of people don't do it, but one of the issues is obviously you have to then make puzzles kind of solvable by just yourself, or just lock off parts of the game because you've not got XYZ to help you, or at least distract you. And it also makes surviving harder because you've suddenly not got the people that can either pull an enemy away or vice versa. So part of my approach is I'm going to see how it plays out. I'm going to try and design everything so you can still solve it, but it'll just be harder.
Mm.
Or this is another thing. I maybe make them harder to kill, so they'll run away more and things like that. Is because one of the issues, obviously, as well, is you don't want them to die while you can't see them on the screen because it when I initially was playing around with the system. Initially, I didn't have the swapping and viewing them as they were carrying out their orders. So what you can do now is, if you issue orders, you stay on basically like a walkie-talkie in quotation marks view, so you can see them carrying out the actions and stuff, because it makes it more fun. Even though in reality you won't be able to watch them via walkie-talkie, it makes it more fun to see them carrying out your orders when you're X rooms over. And with that, I think death should also be a part of that. They shouldn't be able to be killed while you can't see them. I think because I always find it frustrating when you come across your pal that you thought was fine and they're dead all of a sudden. You don't know, like, the body's there and they've got like the sprayed about all over the place, but you don't know how they've actually passed away. So I am playing around with little bits of how to approach that best way. But yeah, it does create quite a few design challenges, which again are fun to solve, and I've solved them in the build that I'm currently doing. So it should be all good.
Well, in terms of like design challenges outside of the constraints that you've imposed on yourself with, again, this Mega Drive Genesis kind of thing, that was going to be basically one of our questions, was like, have you encountered any challenges in designing this specific type of game that you've already encountered and you've learned from and have kind of like influenced the direction, I suppose, that you're taking the Bagman in your current build?
Yeah, so one of the constraints which made it a little bit harder for the AI behavioral system is I can't have multiple things loaded. So once you unload one view, you have to kind of like simulate or act as like a global version of that character running around in the world and stuff. That's created kind of a few not issues, just technical challenges to jump over, because maybe in a more traditional setup you'd actually keep things loaded in and you just hide stuff and all that kind of stuff, because modern PCs and all that can have a lot displayed at the same time. Again, if you're working like in the 3D world as well, you did still be walking around in that 3D space, so you wouldn't have to kind of simulate them as much walking around. So that was an interesting kind of constraint that's kind of fed into how I approach the AI behavioral stuff, which is kind of a core component of the game. Yeah, so that's been a big one. But to be fair, making it with a controller in mind has actually been quite beneficial for if I wanted to put it on modern consoles, which are all controller based basically. It's already working all there. I've already got like a nice 3-button setup of kind of interacting with everything fluidly and stuff. It even has a radial thing, which I don't think Mega Drive games did back then, but that brings up hot selections and stuff. So I've been able to kind of bring more modern-y type UX feeling into a very kind of classical game, which is kind of helpful.
We were just talking recently about, again, a PSX style experience, and when it came to controls and the notion that, you want something that maybe is heavily steeped in nostalgia or serves as a homage. For me personally, like the one aspect of those types of experiences that I'm not always super fond of is like when it just plays exactly as it did, 20 or 30 years ago, for me personally speaking. So, the notion that, again, like taking the Bagman and designing it with these certain constraints in mind, but also making those modern concessions, whether they be, controls or otherwise. Like we had covered the Drifter earlier in the year, and that was one of the big aspects of that game's design that I was so fond of, was that, maybe it looks like it's from the 90s realm of point and click games, but it certainly doesn't play like one from the controlling standpoint, even though it does naturally abide by the typical point and click mechanics. So that's good to hear. You got some you got that balance down, it sounds like, or you're working towards that balance of
to the point where I neglected the mouse a bit too much. I was like, oh yeah, I have to do these things with the mouse now, like, because so I was like, oh, poo, because I just not touched the mouse for such a long time because it's all controller and that's like, it work. Don't get me wrong, it works now on the mouse and whatnot, but there was a period where it's like, oh yeah, I need to. The radial window on a mouse doesn't really work the same, and so I had to put icons elsewhere in more the classic positions and things. Which is fun. So it should basically cover everything, though. I'm hoping when it comes to platforms, it's basically covers PC, mouse, keyboard users, and controller users. I'm very much a PC, keyboard and mouse kind of player, especially with point and clicks. But I've just had my kind of console-y hat on, so I've just been controller focused.
So you, as we've said in the intro, like have an extensive background in development support and whatnot. But for the Bagman, writing the characters and the narrative for it, what was that process sort of like? You've mentioned.
This is all new to me, to be fair. I've always, dabbled in writing and whatnot, but I'm very much more of a programmer and like with designing lead-ins. I've worked with some very, very great creatives, and I've always made sure to listen to whatever they're telling me, and I've taken part in design meetings with some important, really great designers, and I've always made sure to listen to what kind of things they're saying, what kind of things they look for. And I tried to absorb most of that as much as possible. But for me, I learn best when doing. And one of the things I want to get better at is writing, design, and narrative design and all that kind of good stuff. And the only way I can do that, the only way I know how to learn and get better at things is by doing. So I thought, what, I'll just do it for this game. And the trailer was fun because I basically approached it as a script, so I got a little bit of script writing software, I think Act Studio, and just I had these images in my head, and I wrote it down in a script format because then I could at least pass the script to the VO artist, and and they were able to take that and then do the voiceover. But that helps me kind of like I just enjoy the process. It's just a nice process to kind of like tackle it. I've started using Twine, which is a really great tool for easily making like text flow type games, but it works really well with narrative design, at least in my opinion, as a newbie at this, I guess. But yeah, you can lay it all out. You can kind of like program the add code in to make it a little bit more complex, so you can do cool stuff in there, and that really helps with like, does this sound good, does this feel good, and also feedback. I'm from a background where I know how important feedback is, so just getting friends to play it, or does this, taking to a friend who's, a bit of a writer and say, does this sound shit? Yeah, it does sound shit. Okay, why does it sound shit? Because you've done this, Y, Z. So it's like, it's being open as well. I'm not gonna, I don't really have a massive ego or anything, which helps with these things. I could go, hey, you help me write this type of thing, and they give me advice, and I can go away and keep at it and stuff. So I'm hoping, I'm just refining it as well. I kind of hammer at stuff until it feels right. And I think for me, a lot of this is just, does it feel right? I don't know. That might be a bad way to approach things, but for me, like the trailer just felt right. I was watching a lot of like really old trailers for horror films and slashers, and I just wanted to invoke that kind of feeling give it a bit of a story behind the trailer, but also like link in the game mechanics somewhat, rather than just have a trailer that says, here's some text on the screen, command your friends, text you, hide and run, point and click. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to kind of have a little bit of almost like a slasher trailer feel to it, so it felt like you could watch it and kind of enjoy it even if you weren't going to buy the game, so to speak.
Yeah, you could definitely see that, I think, in that trailer, and I think as a result, it kind of manages to evoke both things, so that and that sort of 90s video game advert. Well,
Yes,
probably with less shouting, but
yeah.
it's like
I wanted to. At first, I really did want to go over the top Sega Mega Drive. Whoa! Type thing. Rain it in, Nathan. Rain it.
Yeah, crash zooms into like neon coated kid.
Yeah, some kid with his hair blown back, going
That's
whoa! Yeah. Oh, that'd been great. Maybe for the next trailer.
There you go.
Thinking more about the protagonist Eloise for the game in writing her character, sort of what were the influences for her and sort of the arc that I suppose you had planned for her?
So it's nothing set in stone at the moment. I've kind of got a rough idea. She's I didn't want to start the game off with her. So in a lot of horror films, the kind of female protagonist, I can't never say that word, ends up being kind of like not weak, but kind of meek and a bit shy and quiet and whatnot, and then she becomes a badass at the end of it. I wanted to start off as a bit of a badass, but then open up about stuff. She's got her own, trauma and griefs and stuff, and I think part of her opening up is exploring those elements a little bit more, which will be interesting for me. So she's kind of a I don't know if badass is the right word, but like she's just strong character from the get go, but she's kind of closed off. But she's got these two good friends that she kind of like through playing the game, she opens up a bit more and whatnot. But yeah, I'm still kind of like narrative wise, I kind of like jump a little bit still. I'm still kind of planning out how some of the characters feel and stuff. Because I go down one route and then it's like, oh, but wouldn't it be better if they were a little bit more like this and stuff. So. Which is great at this present moment in time because I'm still kind of building things out and obviously I'm going to looking for funding and whatnot.
Yeah.
So once after this week, I think it is, or maybe next week when pitch build is done, I can then jump back into the writing stage, which I'm missing a lot at the moment. It's very much getting everything just functional to a point where it's shippable to a few people that are interested. So yeah, I've kind of like just basically been writing lots of code and not really doing much of the creative side, which I really enjoy doing. I'm learning that even though obviously I don't do the art or the animations, there's still a lot of work goes into writing the briefs, planning it all out, planning when X, Y, Z is needed and all that kind of stuff. And then, so obviously I've not got any funding at the moment, so it's all from my back pocket. So I have to I round robin the kind of funds. So I go, okay, this month I can afford this and that. And then so I can never have people working parallel at the moment. It's always, staggered. It's just the way I can afford it at the moment. But, so that's all takes time to plan in and you've got to wait for things to come in. So it's a lot of interesting problems. So, but it keeps you away from doing the things that I want to be doing, which is like writing and exploring the characters a bit more and fleshing out like the core story. I've got a very, it's deeper level now. It's not just high level, but there's still a lot of work that needs on the final bit of the story that I want to bring together.
Sure. I guess in working with artists, like what has that process been like in sort of like having them bring your vision to life? Like you even just starting with obviously that very iconic already banner image for the Bagman of this bag of flesh. Like what was that sort of collaborative process like?
So that's my favorite part of all this is working with really talented creative people and also explaining stuff and then going, what? So yeah, I want a fleshy bag, which, but then they take their own spin on it. And so Milos Kostek made that. I originally reached out to a couple of different artists to get different styles, basically. I was sharing my mood boards and whatnot. And then Milos kind of created this, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. He also understood the limitations of the colors and whatnot. And so it was a much easier conversation to have as well, because I didn't have to kind of like keep going back and forth and explain this can't be done this way and whatnot. He's also very forgiving as well. So as I was learning how to kind of express myself better to artists, he was like giving me good feedback on how to do that better, basically, which was great, because one of the skills obviously you have to develop is how, as a non-artist, is how to get what's in my head and my mood boards to them in a way which they can kind of understand and go with. And thankfully, like, mood boards help a lot, and then just iteration. But that was a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed, working with Miles and the other artists that I've managed to, work with.
Yeah, I have very limited experience working with artists. Granted, the coming up with the artwork for our podcast, right? That was going back and forth with our artist and past guest Matt Jordan, and at the same time, though, like, I would imagine that process of working with those artists, like, maybe that like kickstarted new ideas for you. Getting to see their interpretation of things, and you're like, well, maybe that's not quite right, but there's an aspect of that I like, and then I
Yeah,
could maybe try to
100%.
like funnel that into another aspect.
100%. So the best thing from this is why I don't think AI, generative AI, will ever replace humans in this regard, is because the amount of cool shit and different directions I've gone in just because I've had an artist look at something, go, why have you not tried it like this? Can I try it like this? Sure, go ahead. And you get that a little bit of a change that makes it even better. Whereas if I was just typing commands into, a prompt, I'd miss out on that kind of engagement with someone that actually knows what they're doing to make, to take it in such a different and nicer way, and things like that. So yeah, so for me, having that back and forth has been invaluable, both because they can put their own spin on it, they can tell me if there's issues. So as an example, when I started speaking into Elena, who does the environment art, I was basically coming with her with a lot of early environment work that we'd not really explored, and she pointed out a lot of perspective issues. There was an issue because it's pixel perfect. The character, as she walks kind of further away, she doesn't change size. And then she pointed out, look how big she is compared to that door. I was like, oh shit, yeah, because she's not changing size and the door and the environment's not, and you can't really do that. So perspective came as such an important issue to solve, and we kind of solved. This was when we had this toilet environment, and we call it the toilet angle, because it's literally this angle that we kind of figured that works best. It's like 98% there, where she can be placed pretty much. Any character can be placed pretty much within this certain area, and they'll perspectively look the right size compared to the rest of the environment, and that was invaluable. If I hadn't had that feedback, the game wouldn't look as good as it does, perspective wise, and everything would feel a little bit off, size wise. And I think as games. So the thing that's beautiful about the retro stuff as well, I think it works because it's at least consistent. If you've got a consistent art style, doesn't matter if it's beautiful realistic graphics or retro-y pixely stuff. If it's consistent and it's like a consistent art style, you're winning 90% of the audience then, because it feels right. In my opinion, I could be completely wrong, but yeah, but it's all about that. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to dip out now. Lovely talking to you, Nate. And,
you too, mate. Take care.
All the best for the game.
Yeah, again, like that collaborative process, I would imagine, is the aspect that, again, like that can be funneled into so many other aspects of design. And like you said earlier, when you were talking about the process of getting feedback, right, and having to be very sort of like humble in that, as a writer myself, you just, in working with so many editors, you got to get used to people asking people for their opinion and being like, yeah, they might come back and say this is great. They also might come back and say this bit's a bit shit, which is like the biggest aspect of creating anything, is like you have to be open to that feedback and whatnot. Yeah. And ultimately, like you said, that feedback is going to be invaluable more than likely in ways that, you got a million things going on with what you're doing. You might not realize that or pick up on that. So that's like, again, speaks to that collaborative process that is so strong. Bad Tasty in general, the studio, really getting to channel your love of horror into basically an entire studio. What was that sort of process like in coming up with Bad Tasty, the conceptualizing it, and inevitably, the very unique branding for this, for your new studio?
All right. So the logo, that's fun. So the logo, I'm not a big fan of, I think it's called flat design, where it's just like the name and it's got a few colors and that's it. And I always was a big fan of the old kind of like 90s, maybe even earlier in the 90s logos of games companies. They're always a bit over the top. A lot of them were very chromy, but they had that kind of cool feeling. So I wanted something that kind of wasn't just a bunch of words. I also, with it, I wanted to work on games which are kind of like a bit different. Yes, they'll probably have a market, but I'll also always try and do something a little bit different and have a little bit of like basically fuck you energy sort of thing. I wanted kind of like punky vibe type
Yeah.
aesthetic. So I was looking through art, and then I'd worked with an artist on another game, which when I priced up, I just couldn't afford it. Not the art, the actual full game. So I was like, okay, can't make that. But so I worked with an Italian artist called Valentina Testa, who did some art for this game, and it was in this kind of like it was like a key art for American retro horror comic style, and I loved it. And then I was looking at the 1950s, just kind of art in general, making boon boards and enjoying kind of like all the different art that came from that. And then I there's the memes of I don't know if you remember them, but like they were like 1950s American posters of like kids eating baked beans and like watching bread. It's like a bread advert, and like they've got these like kind of like almost freaky kind of faces.
Hmm.
I was like, okay, I want something like that, but a logo. And we went a bit back and forth, and we came up with this kind of like aesthetic of I guess it's 1950s esque, but with a bit of a punk attitude to it, and that. So that was a lot of fun. And then I worked with a VO called Tammy King, and she did this kind of I wanted like it to sound almost like a punky London shout out. So at the end of the trailer, she does this shout out, "Bad Taster," and it just felt right. And it just all felt right. That's a kind of guiding principle of certain things. If it feels right and makes me smile, or maybe there's something there. So for Bad Taster, that was it. Also, the name of the company. I was playing around with a few ideas, but then I've got a little girl. And at the time, she was eating something, and she went, "Oh, Bad Taster," and it just made me laugh. So I thought, okay, that's a cool name. So
That's
I'll go
amazing.
with it. Yeah. But so I had this kind of like image, just in my head of like that sounded cool. So I'll do that as well, because it's kind of like evokes. It's like horror, but not horror, and all this kind of stuff. Because I wanted to make kind of weird horror-y type games. Or cyberpunk games, but because that's another genre that I just love. I love to make something like horror-y, cyberpunk-y type stuff. But yeah. So from that, just like kind of focused on keeping those aesthetics and making sure the logo kind of felt cool and made me smile. And every time I see it, I still get a smile on my face. So I think it does the trick for me. And almost one of these things, like I don't mind too much if it doesn't fit what a logo should be. Because if it feels right and it makes me smile, then let's just do that. Unless like a big, I'm ever someone that's like into logos, I guess, says, "Hey, that's not right," I guess. And then I might go, "Why?" and learn something. I'd still keep it though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what kind of side there. Yeah.
I love that insight into it. Yeah, the logo is one of those things that I think is like, because for whatever reason I saw the logo, probably because I follow you on Twitter. I saw your logo before I saw anything about the Bagman, and I just remember thinking like, oh, it's kind of like deranged a little bit, and that kind of like is a nice primer, I think, for the mission statement or I don't want to speak for Bad Tasty, but what you have at the top of the Bad Tasty page of horror games, indie weird, right? And I think that's kind of like a perfect blending of the imagery with sort of like your approach to game design, I suppose, with Bad Tasty, which is quite cool.
Just because you brought it up, so I have like my own little pillars, and these are evolving. But you just with you saying that, then so basically my core kind of pillar is on my little document. I have abide the vibe, and like I've got a picture of the Big Lebowski, the dude.
Yes. Yep.
I imagine that's something you'd say, but like basically leaning into that, it can only create kind of authenticity. As long as if it feels right and abide the vibe, then leaning into that can only bring positive things, because it's from a place of authenticity and love. You know what I mean? So it's The other pillar here that I've written is be weird, be beautiful, be kind, be yourself with a touch of fuck you punk energy. So that's
love it.
yeah. So I've got a few of these as well. that I just kind of like just remind me of like why I'm making things, what's important for me as a developer. And also, obviously, I do always have one foot in the ground because, I have a family. I like, having a roof over my head, so in my head, yes, be weird, be beautiful. Just make sure there's some interest with what I'm making, because it's the tale as all this time with indie development. You could be so passionate about something and be so kind of like hammered with an idea, but then you put all this time in and you sell it and no one buys it, and then you're screwed, or at least
Right.
you're not screwed, but you don't want to. That's still probably going to happen, but if you kind of tricked yourself into thinking at least there's some interest here, then it might not happen. I don't know. I've got no answers there because it always seems the game industry is such a weird beast.
Yeah, and unfortunately an ever evolving one in not always
Yes.
positive ways. But
No.
no, that I very much agree with that sort of approach to a creative endeavor. I think especially the older we get, I think it's important to have that footing or that grounding, as you put it, because of the fact that it's like, yeah, you need to pursue what you're passionate about, and having a goal to achieve it, but you also need to be realistic of the landscape of one's own life, if you will.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a realization that I wish that I came across when I was much younger. But when I was much younger, and this is probably lots of people, you're so unsure about yourself and what you should be chasing, or
Yeah.
you're finding about yourself, then that I just wasn't possible to kind of get in that mindset at that point, which is a shame because I had more energy then and less responsibilities, and so I could take more risk, because that's the thing, like risk, it's all risky.
Mhm.
You just got to kind of take the biggest risk that you feel comfortable taking, so yeah, and obviously the older you get, the harder it is to take bigger risks, I guess.
Mm.
Unless
Oh,
like unless you like living life on easy and you're loaded from the get go, then I suppose.
well, that's not relatable at all.
No.
um, yeah, no, I think that's as as somebody that went to school for English and then didn't really know any, didn't really have a whole lot of prospects right out of college. That's very relevant to
I
the
did
older I
performing
got.
arts,
And
dude.
oh yeah, there you go.
I wanted to be an actor.
It's great to pursue our passions, but like I said, it's like finding the ways that those skill sets can be applicable to something that's a little more consistent of a check, if you will.
Yeah, I was also awful at acting. So I was like, "Oh yeah, better not do that. I'm better with computers."
I want to take it back for a moment. Something you said about love of horror, wanting to make horror games, but you also mentioned like cyberpunk.
Yes.
What appeals to you about that genre, and kind of how would you blend that with horror? I'm interested.
I think it's kind of horror in itself in a way, like because
Mm,
like the whole. If you look at that, just like your standard cyberpunk, it's like everything's government, not even government anymore, but everything's corporation owned. We've given our bodies over to the machine and all this kind of stuff. When I was younger, I used to think that was a really cool idea. As I've gotten older, and with like AI and all that kind of
mhm.
stuff, it's changed my perspective somewhat.
Cool.
I love lo-fi kind of sci-fi,
Mm,
which kind of doesn't have the whole horrible, I guess, I don't know, like AI leanings as much. AI was very much. I loved the old like in Neuromancer, and books like that.
mm,
The hacking was always this interesting kind of
mhm.
aspect. There's one of my favorite Mega Drive games is called Shadowrun, the Mega Drive version. The hacking in that, the mini game, whatever you want to call it, was really really good. I'd love to do a game something like that where you're kind of exploring cyberspace, but in this kind of lo-fi version of the cyber world. Um, I think you could do some cool stuff there. It might not be as horror based, but it'd be weird. Which,
Yeah.
yeah,
I know. I think that's well put in terms of like the inherent horror of cyberpunk stuff. Like when I was a kid, that notion of ghosts in the shell and stuff like that
yeah,
was so cool. But then the older you get and just seeing how technology shapes things and whatnot, it just becomes more horrifying, which has always been, I suppose, an
yeah,
inherent part of that
yeah.
that genre. In thinking about your background in development, right, and the various games that you've supported, I guess, what is that professional experience like? What was the biggest takeaway from that in not only starting your own company, but in starting this brand new game, and this being, the launch title for Bad Tasty.
It's been interesting working with lots of other people. I've learned that
Mm.
very confident people can often be
Mm.
wrong, and um, and that it's okay to be wrong, and it's okay to ask questions and whatnot, but to trust myself a little bit more, and that we're basically all just fumbling around in the dark trying to make everything. I very much believe in now that if someone says something to be 100% true, I'm not going to take their advice unless like it's a particular thing. I've learned that the people that are best worth trusting with their advice are the people that aren't sure themselves, but they've got a good opinions and thoughts to put across. That's my kind of like something I've learned just from working with various people and stuff, which has been quite interesting. I've always kind of kept my ear open, and I've been open to learn new things and all that kind of stuff. So that's been super helpful. And I think so. Taking that kind of all that I learned in that development stuff for both embedded software engineering to games that I've worked on has been useful because it's kind of put me into a position where I don't have any of the answers, but what I do know is I think I've got a good idea for me. It seems to do well. I get good feedback from it, and from that I can kind of go, okay, well, let's build it and figure it out. I've got the technical skills to build it, but let's be open for feedback as well. I don't want to be blindly making something. I don't want to be designed by committee, but I just do what I'm told. But just be open to feedback, but also have the what's the word? The understanding of myself to trust myself a little bit more as well. I guess it's like basically like self-discovery and all that kind of shit.
Sure. That's a very valid a valid way to look at it. I think also like the loudest voice in the room is quite often the one that should not be heeded.
Yeah,
And so
definitely.
like but having that introspection into through the process and learning not only more about what works, but also your own creative process and having the wherewithal to realize the importance of other voices. But you you build that confidence, I think, when you work with enough people, but while at the same time taking some feedback, but staying true to your vision. Because at the end of the day, if you listen to too much feedback from others and don't trust yourself with what you set out to do, then you end up with something that lacks your mark, if you will, so to speak.
You like that what we talked about earlier about that authenticity,
Mm.
that you've put into the game. I think especially like on this level where it's not solo endeavor because I work with others freelancers and whatnot, but it feels very solo most of the time, especially with the design and the writing and whatnot. So that's my chance to leave a little bit of a mark. People might like it, people might not like it, but it's a chance to do a little something that is a part of me in the process, and see. And if it is wrong, there'll be things to learn there. If people don't like a certain thing, then great, that makes me a better developer. Hopefully, I can catch those things early enough to kind of, and I'll be open enough to strong feedback in certain points that that won't be the case. But it's just one of those things about learning your craft a little bit as well.
Gonna ask generally for my own curiosity. Like, you're obviously very, very busy, but have you had time to enjoy any horror movies or horror films lately that you've particularly enjoyed?
I've been watching. I've literally just about half an hour before this call finished watching the third episode of Welcome to Derry. I'm
Ah,
really enjoying that. I
yeah.
think that's great. It's very over the top in parts, but it's kind of like very surprising from the outcomes. I obviously don't want to do any spoilers, but the outcomes from the different episodes so far have been, especially 1 and 2. I've been, whoa, holy shit, I did not see that coming. That's been fun. Horror films. I watched Society for the first time. Um,
Oh,
was it last week or maybe 3 days? I don't know. Not so long ago. It's one of them films that I've always gone, I'll watch that.
yeah.
But the acting, it's like one of them. The acting's quite interesting. So when I started watching it in the past, it's like, oh, that's gonna be difficult to watch. I gave it a bit more of a chance, and I got really into it. And yeah, that was the body horror in that was phenomenal. Like very uncomfortable to watch.
Right.
Like it was really well done as well for the time. Like I was like, fuck me, that's really good. So I watched that recently. What else? I've watched quite a few things. It's just you've asked me that question, they've kind of skipped my brain.
That happens. How about horror games lately? It's one of those things, and kind of like learning a little bit more about your taste in horror. What kind of games when you have time to play in your free time?
Yeah, so games. So you did an interview not so long ago. I recently played Carnival
Hmm.
by Beyond Booleans. I really enjoyed that. That's one of the reasons hopefully not a spoiler. I watched Society, like put it on the list again to watch Society because of that. And then I got through Nightmare Frames after playing An English Haunting, which is Postmodern Adventures.
I need to play that
I
as well.
Yeah, I really, really liked An English Haunting. I thought I love that Victorian-esque period stuff, like Penny Dreadfuls and all that kind of stuff. Love that shit. And then so I really enjoyed An English Haunting. So I thought I'll better play Nightmare Frames. I thought like going into it because I think it was maybe his first game or their first game. It wasn't going to be as good as An English Haunting. I still prefer An English Haunting, but it was Nightmare Frames was really good. Like I really loved some of the puzzles in that, and just the direction of the story was great. What else am I playing? I'm playing Skin Freak by
Nice. Yep.
Black Priest. I need to wait for an update because I've run into an issue, so I'm going to give it a little time again before jumping back in.
We're actually covering that next week.
Oh, nice,
for the
cool.
podcast, so.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be cool. I'll give that a listen. Yeah. So but I was really enjoying the vibes of that as well. I enjoyed his other games as well. What else am I playing? I don't get as many games to play, as time to play as I'd like recently, just because I've been so busy. Let me just quickly check.
Yeah. While you're checking, you said you enjoyed English Haunting. Have you played The Excavation of Hobbs Barrow?
Oh yes, I have. Yes, sorry,
Okay.
that is one of my favorite. Yes, that is a fantastic one. Is it Cult of Lost Cults? They're doing some
Yes.
collectible stuff. I've pre-ordered that straight away. I'm getting that. Oh, that looks so good. Yes, I love that game. It's one of the reasons I was thinking prior to kind of fully going into this was, oh, cool. That's a point and click that really gets the horror aspect in a slow kind of build up way. And kind of like it was very inspirational for me anyway. And to be fair, I played that before I rechecked some more modern point and clicks like An English Haunting and Carnival and whatnot, because it's one of the aspects that I hadn't touched for a while. I think the last horror point and click I'd played before all these was Frambo, which I loved as well. That was like messed up. But then jumped into that was really, really good. The other game I'm playing, sorry, I went off a bit on tangent, is the Rocky Horror Show video game. It's a platforming game. It was released a little while ago, to be fair. I've been playing through that.
Nice. Well, yeah, it's always great to hear that developers themselves actually have time to go back and enjoy the thing that they spend all their hours in the day working on. Because quite often when we chat with developers, much like yourself, you've got a very full plate with little free time. So it's great to hear like ability to enjoy these games and kind of like get to see what your peers are doing in the subsequent genre and whatnot.
Yes, very much so. I think the Steam Deck helps me kind of play a little bit more games recently. I recently got one. I've just been able to kind of find more time because obviously I'm in front of the computer most of the time working. So when I'm kind of like I'm done, like I want to get away from the computer, but unfortunately all my games are here. so having a Steam Deck allows me to kind of like just chill in bed and whatnot.
I am highly considering getting one of those because, like you just said, like I'm at the computer all day and whatnot, and so like getting to just sit on the couch but still get to take a crack at some things that some games are better suited for that format. I think, anyways. You don't necessarily have to, especially obviously point and click. I think that would be the type of thing I would love to take on the go with me outside of just using like a laptop or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Like the brilliant thing with it is you can kind of just like the Switch, you can just push the button, leave it, and then come back straight away, and it keeps your state and whatnot, without kind of quitting and reloading stuff. So with I played all the An English Haunting, Carnival, all that on my Steam Deck. Just like it seems like a nice format to play point and clicks, but particularly.
As you mentioned, Carnival. The last thing I'll say is I would, if you haven't played some of Jacob Beyond Boolin's games on itch, he released one over the summer called Snarl, which is one of these single sitting kind of serving horror games. I highly recommend that, and going back and playing like Teeth of Glass and The Anchorite. He's naturally, as you listen to the show, he's one of our favorite developers to play his work and whatnot. I still haven't, I'm very guilty of this. I haven't played his first game, Obsession, but I just picked it up on sale on Steam. So that's going to be maybe then the thing that I play over the holiday, just sit down and kind of delve into one of those mysteries. But yeah, no, I guess that's going to do it for our sort of chat on Bagman and getting to know you, Nathan. But before I let you go, do you want to plug any of your socials where people can find you, follow you for updates on the Bagman's development and future Bad Tasty endeavors?
So if you want to follow me on Twitter or X, what you want to call it, it's Bad Tasty Horror. You can go to my website, badtasty.com, and the game, The Bagman, is on Steam. The Bagman, just search that and you can find it and give it a little wish list to tickle if you want, if you like that sort of thing. That'd be cool. But yeah, I'll be at I don't know if you guys are going, but the Horror Game Awards are doing a live show this year, and they're giving tickets away, so I'll be there as well, and that'll be exciting because I've been kind of hankering for some kind of like event that's for horror games that you can go to and meet other, either developers, content creators, other people that are horror nerds like us, and just hang out for a bit and chat, because I think that's always helpful just to meet some of the faces. I think, definitely that'd be really cool.
No, I wish I'm based in the U.S. and getting over there for this. Unfortunately, is not going to happen this year. But who's to say it won't happen in the future? But no, as somebody that's followed you on social media now for a while and followed the Bagman's development, it was great to have you on and get to pick your brain naturally about the game, your background, but just getting to kind of get a better understanding of your sort of relationship with horror and how that ultimately informs your work.
Oh yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you all.
No problem. And maybe sometime in the future when you're a little further in development, we'll have you back and we can dig into the nitty gritty more of the Bagman.
Yeah, well, we could do a commentary as well if you want. I can just scream about the bits that were really hard.
That would be great. We'd love that. All right, Nathan. Thank you again, man.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Safe Room. If you enjoy the show, please rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky at Safe Room Pod for show updates. As always, our main episodes of Safe Room drop every Monday, but our bite-sized episodes of Horror Bytes, our indie horror showcase, drop every Thursday. You can follow the Horror Bytes Twitter account at horrorbytes_SR. You can join our Discord channel, Safe Room Podcast, to chat with us and other horror fans about the genre we all love. And finally, you can send emails to saferoompod@gmail.com if you'd like to share your thoughts on a game we have or are going to cover. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.